Major matchup at the Emirates Stadium. Let's hear from the managers, Mikel Arteta and Pep Guardiola.
Well, first of all, I think that we have the best atmosphere ever at the Emirates, and if we can create it, and that's going to be so helpful for the team. Is how we manage. We have moments that we have managed it exceptionally well. Against PSV was a really good example, set some pass against the Spurs, but that's down to us. But hopefully the crowd can produce that, and that will be a big plus for us.
When they fought, to be champion last season, for nothing they could not do it, and this season still they are there again and again. Yeah, Arsenal is back where he was when a young boy or started being manager in Barcelona. I know he fought with a select Man United team or whatever, but always was there. So since I arrived here, it was not there. For many years was not there, and now it's already back. So it's a contender. Yes or yes, and it's one in the calendar when you see you have to go to Emirates is one of the toughest ones. It's normal.
Well, Arsenal were the main challengers to City last season, but it was still a gap between the two of them. And City have this fantastic record against Arsenal, 12 in a row.
Yeah, they do. And I think obviously last season it came down to that game at the Etihad, but Arsenal lost it before that against Southampton and those types of teams dropping points against West Ham as well. And ultimately, Manchester City, I was probably one of the only people that backed Arsenal to win. I was saying, top of the league at Christmas, they could definitely do it. And then they kind of just fallen off just a little bit at the end. But there was so much progression from Arsenal last year. Went from not making the top four to then coming second in the league. And Mikel Arteta touched upon it there. The atmosphere at the Emirates is the best I've ever seen it. Since they've moved from Highbury, which I loved going there when I played for Arsenal, it was brilliant. But the atmosphere just hasn't been at the Emirates. These last couple of seasons, Julian, has been amazing.
Yeah, the Highbury Library.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah.
Very different. I think that the fans really feel this club. There's been a reconnection between the fans and the club that had gone away at the end of the Wenger's years and then Emery and all of that. And I think Arteta has also kind of brought that mentality all together, which is very impressive.
Let's talk about Arteta and his battle with Pep, obviously one of the side shows and a major one in terms of what they're going to do out there. This recent record that I mentioned was 12 in a row for City. If they make it 13 in a row, it equals the longest winning run one team has had against another in the Premier League. But you picked up some interesting stuff about the matches between the two last season.
Yeah, we discussed this a bit before the show. Last season they played 3 games together against each other, 2 in the league, of course, and 1 in the FA Cup. And each time Arteta, who's never beaten Pep, by the way, in the league, apart from that win in the FA Cup in 2020, tried to come up with a high aggressive press, man-on-man. So everybody had one player they had to follow everywhere for that press. And Pep in the first game chose to play long on Haaland to beat that press, and that was very effective. In the second game, where Arsenal were at the Emirates, they put them under a lot of pressure. Bernardo Silva playing a left-back, if you remember. And then when they had the ball, was coming into midfield. That didn't work out. Pep changed everything at half-time, and then they went 4-3-3 and they won that game late. And then the third game at the Etihad, that Liam mentioned earlier, he had De Bruyne playing almost as a second striker next to Haaland in the 4-2-4 formation, and Arsenal could not cope with that at all. So every time it seems that at the moment Pep have a solution for any problem that Mikel Arteta puts on him. Let's see if that's the same on Sunday.
Both teams missing some key players, or some key players in danger of missing the game. Let's talk about Saka, because he is in contention, we've heard from Arteta, to feature, but the question is he being played too much? Should he be given a break? From a player's point of view, is he just wants to play?
I think I would want to play, but then I think for ultimately you have to manage the player. Every player wants to play, but sometimes you have to take it away. But a game like this, he has to play. Obviously if he's got a knock, that's a little bit different, but he was carrying something in the last game as well. But he's been amazing. And the fact that he can play at that level and be consistent in that way year after year at such a young age is amazing. He's such a top player. Because there's not much consistency, is there, in the Premier League sometimes? You see something. Manchester City seem to be the only team that seem to have that consistency every single game. Some of their players, when Kevin De Bruyne plays, at least 8s and 9s out of 10s. So I feel like Saka is one of those players that always maximises potential in every game, always looks dangerous, and he'll be a loss if he's not going to be able to play.
Yeah, I think it's a massive blow. Maybe the worst one for Arsenal, for that team, for everything they bring to the club. The good thing, in a way, if we can say like that, is it's an international break straight after. So it's not like Arsenal were playing 3 days later in the Champions League, for example, where you would not want to take any risk. If he can't play for England and he misses out on 2 games, I don't think it's the end of the world, and he can rest for 10 days and then go again with Arsenal after the break.
want to stick with you because you mentioned Kevin De Bruyne already. We know he's not going to be involved in that game. And he's such a prolific record against Arsenal the last couple, 8 goals in his last 6 league games. He's a big miss. And then how big of a miss is Rodri from what we've seen?
So KDB we knew, and we know that he won't be ready before probably January. For Rodri, it's a very different one.
Yeah.
He's probably the most important player in the City team this season, more than Haaland, more than Alvarez, who've been outstanding, especially Alvarez. But without him, we saw against Wolves, not the same fluidity when they have the ball and certainly out of possession. You don't have anyone to be able to kind of break the opposition's attack, for example. And you see on the stats with or without him, and it's always a bit difficult because they didn't play against the same opposition with him and without him. But still, it's still quite obvious.
Amazing as well, because for someone in that position, it's almost like the selfless position these players play in. But I love watching him. I don't think it matters. City have types of players. It doesn't matter who you support. You have to respect the quality of these players. And Calvin Phillips will probably more than likely play. He's a good player, but he's not Rodri. And I agree with what Julian said. You know, he's one of those players that makes everybody tick. What I will say, though, maybe there's a fragility there with regards to them losing against Wolves, going out of the Carabao Cup against Newcastle. Maybe this could be the moment. I know they won Champions League midweek in that game, but this could be the time where Mikel Arteta could potentially, because it's always been that thing. Mikel Arteta was with Pep. You know, he's a mini Pep. Joe Hart got taken out the lineup when Pep got there. David Raya's come in Ramsdale. It's almost like that comparison is always there. And I feel like it could be the moment where he could potentially get that first win over him.
Yeah, well, that's what we're looking forward to, isn't it?